One of the reasons we've invited our wonderful musicians to be with us today is in observance of the anniversary of Mohandas Karamchand's birthday, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And this was a good time for us all to connect up with our wonderful musicians. And to be sure, I'm going to be using his life to talk about my topic today, which is not the topic that you saw in the newspaper on the corner. It's the one that I was going to do next week, but in consultation with my colleague, it was better to do simple but not easy now. Turned out to be not as simple or as easy, but that's all right. For those who are interested and you haven't been here for a couple of weeks, the continuing saga of my computer is now complete. It's home from the hospital. It has a new hard drive. We're getting reacquainted. And as Monty Python said, there was much rejoicing. Art Prize, if you don't already know, is steaming along, not only in the city, but here in the church. The great interactive piece called Erase, in which a 20-foot drawing of an assault weapon could be erased bit by bit by, well, it all vanished yesterday. There's just a shadow of it left. It's still worth contemplating as a concept and as a piece of work. We're going to be starting up our annual pledge drive in the next couple of weeks. And of course, if you haven't already checked your cell phone or your smartphone, there's more Wi-Fi now. Go ahead, it's okay. I'm not watching. Fountain Club, our high school group, is going on a retreat in a couple of weeks. And Power of Music. I was here last night for a while to watch a great old silent movie, Wings. Anyone ever heard of it? It was the first movie to win an Academy Award. was displayed, projected, whatever, right here with an organist accompanist. It was really fascinating. In some respects, we are living the reputed Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. The sense of busyness borders on confusion in September. So I'd like to hope that the next few minutes provide a little pause in all the activity. As ever, I ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. Well, in summer, you have a different schedule, at least a little bit. And so I started sorting my stuff this summer. Do you have stuff? Does it deserve to be sorted? I'll bet it does. You know what I mean, all that stuff you accumulate over, well, the things you keep because you might use them again, and the stuff that has emotional value, and you just never know. And after a while, if you're not careful, you end up with a lot more stuff than you remember you had. And so now my dining room table is full of photographs, which we've acquired from our lives, from our parents' lives, and we're sorting them out, putting them in various boxes. And it's hard not to do the sorting, but every time you see a photograph, you stop and remember the story, and so it's taking a really, really long time. And then there's the other stuff, you know what I mean? The stuff that you look at and it brings back a memory and you say, boy, remember? Well, for example, there was a day, the vernal equinox, in fact, the first day of spring in 2001. And I remember it because I have a sweater. I and my family, we were traveling through Europe for a few months on a sabbatical. We were teaching the kids as we went from town to town. It was wonderful to teach Roman numerals in Rome, for example. You could see them everywhere, and did architecture and well, at any rate, it's the vernal equinox in Vienna, and I remember it because I've taken my sport coat that I'd been wearing for 6 straight weeks to the cleaners in Vienna. It really needed a cleaning, and we went around the corner from our little flat that we were renting to the cleaner, which in German has the most wonderful name. It's called a Schmutzerei. It really does say it, doesn't it? A Schmutzerei. And I go in and I hand them my jacket and my broken, fractured, demolished German. They are understanding of my limits. And I'm therefore wearing without a jacket, and it's the first day of spring, and I walk out and it starts to snow. So we walk shiveringly over to the Graben, which is a pedestrian shopping mall in downtown Vienna. It doesn't look like the mall you think. It's it's beautiful, and there's a clothing store, and I pick out a tan sweater for way too many euros, or no, they were shillings at that point. That was before the euro. And I put it on, and I wore it many, many days, and I still have it. And whenever I take the sweater out, I can remember that day and how cold I felt and where I was standing. And now you know why we keep stuff. Because the days go by, and we lose track of them, and we wonder where our lives go. And then you see a sweater or a photograph, and suddenly you have it back. The memories, the feelings, and the sensations. How can I give this stuff up? And yet, my basement is full of such stuff. I have more stuff some days than I have life. Is that true for some of you? It's a disease of age. There are people I know, younger than me, who have storage compartments they rent off-site to keep the stuff that doesn't fit in their houses. But we keep it anyway because it reminds us that we lived, that that day was real, that those people existed. Because it answers that most basic question. Does my life matter? And when we can hold on to the sweater or see the photograph, we can say for a moment, yes, it was real. I'm real. But the stuff eventually outnumbers your life, doesn't it? And literally we ponder the boxes in the basement or up in the attic, or metaphorically when we realize how much of our present days are spent thinking about our previous days. And suddenly the words of Henry David Thoreau come back to us with a bitter recognition of its truth. Our life is frittered away by detail, he says. Simplify, simplify. And so we get out the boxes and sort through the stuff. And that's about as far as it goes, doesn't it? Mohandas Gandhi was born on October 2nd of 1869, reared in India, studied law in the Inner Temple of London, the Sanctum Sanctorum of British law, practiced law in South Africa, and devoted most of his life to Indian independence. And along the way through his very intentionally active life, he encountered great thoughts and great minds that helped him consolidate his convictions. One of them was Henry David Thoreau, from whom he didn't get simplify. He'd already learned that from the Hindus and the Jains. What he got from Thoreau was the nonviolent civil disobedience part. He got other things from other people as well, including the great Universalist minister Adin Ballou and the great Russian writer Leo Tolstoy. From all of these great writers, including those of the great scriptures of his tradition, he learned the two things that thereafter directed his life and made almost all of his decisions simpler. One is Satyagraha, became an opera and a film. Satyagraha means adherence to truth or truth force. Not to depart from what is true and always to seek the truth in whatever you do. The other is the word ahimsa, which literally means non-violence or non-harm. In the Mahaprasthanika, a Hindu epic, these words may have been in his life. Ahimsa is the highest virtue. It is the highest self-control. It is the greatest gift. Ahimsa is the highest sacrifice, the finest strength, the greatest friend, the greatest happiness. Ahimsa is the highest truth and the greatest teaching, would be hard to lift it any higher, would you say? This non-violence, adherence to truth, non-violence. And these are the things that Gandhi used like legs to walk through his life. Now, he didn't create these principles, as you well know. Not only did he read Tolstoy and Thoreau and the Hindu scriptures, we can see these principles present throughout history. If you're a philosophy major, you may recognize Immanuel Kant from those two principles. To adhere to truth is the first part of the categorical imperative, to only act on principles that would be universal law. You can see in nonviolence his second categorical principle, never to treat others as objects, but always as creatures like yourselves. But you can also find it in the Golden Rule, which appears everywhere. You can find it in the Bible, you can find it in the Torah, you can find it in the Quran, you can find it in Buddhist scriptures. Everything Gandhi lived for was already universally present. They are the simple truths that we all know. And of course, there are lots of simple truths. Many of them are simple answers, sometimes too simple. We get tempted by the too simple from time to time. H.L. Mencken, my favorite cynic, noticed, and I quote, "There is always a well-known solution to every human problem, neat, plausible, and wrong." We all know people who are so convinced that their answer answers everything that they can't be budged. In fact, they're busy telling us how we should live because they're so sure of the simplicity and the truth of what they do. But Gandhi, in some respects, is not answering a problem. He's looking for principles to guide his life. He's not trying to solve anything. He's trying to find a means to solve things. In this respect, I think of the words of Georges Sand, the great 19th century French writer, who wrote, "The truth is too simple. One must always get there by a complicated route." By which she meant that we have to pare away the things that keep us from it, that sometimes we would prefer the truth to be a little more convenient.